Hey friends, Leighton Hart from Market Street Media. Today we're going to talk about how to use Anchor's new analytics package to create better podcast episodes. But before we get to that, make sure you click that beautiful red subscribe button down below and click the little bell so that you'll get a notification every time we drop one of these new coaching videos for you. Okay, so how can you use analytics to make better podcast episodes? Anchor, inside the app, if you're an Anchor user, they provide information about who's listening to your podcast that can be really helpful to you. And they do it in a way that's simple and user-friendly for podcasters like you and me. Now, if you're, work for like a corporate marketing company or something like that, you may need something like Google Analytics. Google Analytics is probably more horsepower than you or I need, and there's a lot of stuff that's probably just not necessary for us in Google Podcast. Anchor's Analytics has everything you need and nothing that you don't need. So let's take a look at a few of their metrics that we can look at and how we can apply those to create better episodes that your listeners will love. The first thing we can do is we can look at listener demographics. And up to this point, there wasn't really a great way to know a lot about who's listening to your podcast directly through Anchor's app. They've changed that. Okay, listener demographics, that's who's listening to your episode, has recently taken a huge step forward. So here's what you can learn about your audience with Anchor's demographics. First, they'll tell you the gender of your audience. And you can see here, this is, I just pulled screenshots of the analytics for my podcast, Johnson City Living. And you can see that my audience it leans male, so 52% male, 44% female, 4 unspecified, so we don't know, and 0 as identify as non-binary. So what you can see there is that the Johnson City Living audience leans male. This is surprising to me because I would have figured that it would have leaned a little bit female, like probably more female listeners than male listeners, but that's not the case right now. Okay, so the next thing we can look at is the age group of our listeners. You can see here that the typical Johnson City Living podcast listener is somewhere in the 35 to 44-year-old range. And what I'm learning here by looking at these is that basically my podcast attracts people like me. So I'm a 43-year-old male, and I'm getting predominantly people like me. This is okay unless I was trying to reach a different group. If I was trying to reach females over the age of 50, I'm falling on my face. If I'm trying to reach younger professional people, so people in their early 20s, just starting in their careers or something like that, I'm not doing so great. And so what I could do then is I would want to experiment with some new either formats or guests or content to see if I can change these numbers over time. If I can start drawing in, more women or younger men or whatever it is that I'm trying to do. It's helpful to look at these things and know who is listening. Okay, this is the next piece, and this is really, really helpful. I saved this to the end because I feel like it's almost kind of a bonus. The next thing we can look at, and I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger here, is episode drop-off. So what you see is this weird graph here, and let me open that. There we go. Really funky looking chart. I'll make myself a little smaller here. Move myself up here. Okay, so here's this funky looking chart. What this shows is it's going to run a timeline along the bottom. So it shows you, different 2-minute segments throughout your episode. And it's going to show you what you're seeing here is you're seeing the number of people who are still listening to your show at these given points in time. You can see right off the bat that drop-off starts pretty quickly. At least it did for this episode. And so people may have heard like who the guest was or what the topic was and said, okay, well, this one's not for me. I'm in the mood for something else today. And then you can also see who, what percentage of the people who start the podcast stay through to the end. So it looks like I'm holding about 50% of the people that start the podcast for, most of the episode. Where this is helpful, where episode drop-off is helpful, is you can look at little points like this, where you see a drop-off, and then points over here where you see a drop-off, and you can go back into your episode and pull up that timestamp and go, all right, what happened in the episode at this time? And a couple of things that you may want to check for. You may want to check for audio issues. So if your audio, all of a sudden, if there's a glitch or it gets bad, that may be a reason that people just say, I know that I can flip over to this other podcast and have rock solid audio, and people just are kind of finicky about their audio. Was there an ad that caused people to be distracted or whatever, or to bail out or lose interest? You can see if it was an ad that caused your problem. Was it clear from the beginning what the show was about and how it would benefit the listener? So if you set the expectation in your title or your description or your teaser for the show that your show is going to be about one thing, but then listeners get into the show a few minutes and it turns out that it's really not on topic, they may get bored and bail. They may decide it's not for them. Same thing if you don't clearly articulate how the episode is going to benefit the listener. They may choose to use their time in some other way. And then also, if you had a guest or a co-host or somebody else on your show, was that person or their message that they shared, was that on brand for your show? People come to associate your podcast with a certain feel and atmosphere and style. And if something is dramatically opposed to that style or that feel, sometimes people will bail because they just are in the market for something else. So there you go. Listener demographics, age, gender. You can also, Anchor will also tell you where they're listening from. And episode drop-off are a few things that can really help you figure out what's going on in your episodes and how to make them better for the future. So that's it for this episode. Hope that's helpful. If we can be helpful in any way, drop us a comment below and we will be sure to respond. See you next time.